Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On our show today, our guest is Carlee Myers. Carlee is an expert at helping professionals who feel overworked, overwhelmed, or on the verge of burnout relieve stress so they can find more joy at work, home, and beyond. As the founder of the Stress Less Company, Carlee has helped hundreds of professionals across the country take action to reduce stress through coaching. She believes there is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to stress management. Carlee, a diplomat of the American Institute of Stress, has had her work most recently featured in media outlets such as Parade, Good Day Philadelphia, Fox 29, the Philadelphia Inquirer, Philly Mag and Whoolley Magazine. So welcome, Carlee.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So Carlee, could you tell us a little bit about your journey? It says here, based on your bio, that you help people to relieve stress. I believe stress is one of the number one causes of most, if not all, chronic illnesses that we're all faced with globally. So tell us, how did you get onto this journey to manifest or understand that you are manifested to help others reduce stress in their lives?
Yes. So I like to say whenever folks ask me this question that you've opened a can of worms. But, the Cliff Notes version of my story and how I ended up in this line of work is actually, it goes back a really long time. So when I was about 12 years old, my parents had gotten separated and my mom ended up dating again. And you're probably thinking, okay, well, what does that have to do with any of this? Well, my mom ended up actually dating a bad apple. And as a result, that bad apple, she broke it off, and he had never kind of let go of the relationship. And so a few months later, that bad apple, that ex-boyfriend, broke into my childhood home, killed my mom's new boyfriend, and tried to kill my mom.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, as a 12-year-old girl, I struggled with stress, with PTSD, with overwhelm, with anxiety, with fear. I mean, you name it. I was probably struggling with it. And for about 10 years, I really struggled. I mean, and when I say struggled, I think that's probably an understatement. Mm-hmm. And to be clear for everybody who's worrying about my mom right now, she's alive, she's well. All she has, if you saw her today, you would have no idea that she was shot 3 times. And, all she has is a pair of reading glasses and a slight limp. But it's wild. But for me, I struggled for 10 years with, PTSD, with overwhelm, with stress, with everything. And for the first 5 years of my journey, I didn't tell anybody. I thought that if I told anybody, that I would be the straw that broke the camel's back in my family, that my family couldn't take another problem to deal with, or that I would become a burden to other folks. And so as a result, for the first 5 years, I didn't tell anybody. And then one night I actually had probably one of the worst night terrors of my life. And I finally opened up to someone. And thank goodness I did, because then I started slowly but surely sharing with people in my life, hey, I'm kind of struggling right now, or I'm feeling a little stressed, or I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. And I would ask people for advice. Mm-hmm. And it was like clockwork. I would get the same 5 or so responses every single time. Hey, Carlee, have you tried therapy? Have you tried yoga? Have you tried meditation? Have you tried changing your diet? Have you tried exercising? Have you tried insert mainstream approach here, basically?
Right.
And the reality was for me is that I had tried all of that. I mean, I was so desperate for change that I had tried all of that. And some of it didn't work, and some of it worked a little bit, but nothing ever got me over that hump where I was experiencing things like happiness and joy and peace of mind and contentment and silliness and goofiness and all of those beautiful states of mind that I used to roll my eyes at because I thought that they weren't real. I thought people were faking it. Mm-hmm. And all this to say that it took me 10 years to find the thing that worked for me. And at the time, it was art. It was creativity. And now, as I've matured and grown, I've learned that more specifically what I found is this thing called creative stress reduction. And that is any activity that gets us out of fight, flight, or freeze mode and into a state of play or flow. And so I spent a few years when I figured out what this was and what was it was all about and how it worked. I spent a few years being upset because I was like, why isn't anybody talking about this? Like, this is so important. I mean, there's people, I struggled for 10 years. I know there's people that struggle for 20, 30 plus years, and that's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so after I spent a few years throwing a temper tantrum, because no one told me, I had to figure it out on my own.
Right.
I realized, oh crap, like I'm supposed to be talking about this. And so that's how I ended up here. That's how I ended up with the Stress Less Company, because I don't want anyone to feel like they're stuck or that something's wrong with them because those 5 or so mainstream approaches that everyone's talking about isn't quite working for them.
Yeah. It's so fascinating that you shared how you got on your journey was because of a pain that you were experiencing, a challenge that you were facing, that you did the research on your own. You tried different methods, proven methods, not so proven methods, and then you decided to come out with this wonderful solution, and now you're offering it to other people, because all businesses go into operation to solve a problem, and a lot of times it's the entrepreneur, the person starting the business, that has the problem first and realizes that I'm not alone. This isn't an isolated problem. This is a group problem. This is an aggregate problem. How can I create a solution that will not just fix it for me, but fix it for other people? So I really thought that was quite insightful. That's what I got from what you said a while ago, that, a lot of times we're solving problems. We think it's just for us, but a lot of other people are having the same issues.
Yes. Yeah, it's funny. I do a lot of speaking and I share, a more extended version of my story. And of course, I'm sharing tips and tools to manage stress. And I cannot tell you how many times at the end of events, people will come up to me and they'll say, I'm so sorry about what you went through. And my response is always, always kind of jars people, because my response is, I'm not. Because if my mom hadn't gone through that, if I hadn't gone through that, if my family hadn't gone through that, then none of us would be doing the work that we're doing today. None of us would be the people that we are today. That's and true. As a result of that, our lives are so much better.
Yeah, that's so true, Carlee. It's funny that you said that too, because I was listening to a young lady that I follow on LinkedIn, and she suffered, I'm not sure what type of abuse, but I know she suffered severe abuse in her youth. And now she's an influencer on LinkedIn, but one of the things she speaks about, as you said, is she's not sorry about the abuse that she went through, because she doesn't think she'd be the same person that she's today if that wasn't part of her journey. And you're so true. I mean, sometimes we wonder how we end up on the paths that we're on, and we don't realize that it's, it wasn't by chance. It was by design. I mean, why we ended up on the path that we're on. And I guess as you get older and, you become more wise, the picture is much clearer. There's more clarity.
Yes. Hindsight's 20/20. That's for sure.
All right. So talk to us a little bit about stress and customer experience, Carlee. So this podcast is navigating the customer experience, and I must say, in my years of customer service training as a trainer, I find that when I go into organizations, a lot of people are extremely overwhelmed. They're stressed out and they're not doing the things that will help to reduce stress. You mentioned play and flow. And I mean, for some reason, a lot of adults associate the word play with children. And I don't think that play is specific to children. I think adults need play as well. Of course, I guess it depends on what you like and what you don't like in terms of how that play is manifested. But I'd like for you to just expound for us why reducing stress in your life can impact your overall well-being, and of course impact your business, regardless of what type of business you're in, whether you're the employee or the business owner.
Yeah. Stress, managing our stress is so key to having our customers experience our businesses and our work in a much better light. One of the key symptoms, or a few of the key symptoms of stress are really, we can start with the mental health side of things, which is irritability, anxiety, depression. Mm-hmm. And then we go into, the physical symptoms, which are, they can be as slight as, headaches and things like that.
Right.
And so, and then we can go into the more extreme, which is like cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, strokes, and things like that. And so when we think about stress from the perspective of, okay, when I'm experiencing distress, all these symptoms come along with it, then am I really functioning at my best when I'm showing up in my business and in my work? If I'm showing up with a client irritable, or if I'm showing up with a client anxious, are they really getting the experience that they should be getting? My guess is that most folks want to show up with their customers and their clients from a place of abundance and love and care and kindness. But when we're irritable, we can't do that. We're being passive aggressive accidentally, right? We're being short, one word answers. And so, that's just a small example of how stress can majorly impact sales, revenue, the relationship that you're building with your clients. And that's just irritability. That's not even getting into a lot of the conversations that I'm having, with corporate professionals about we are losing millions of dollars every year because of unmanaged stress, because people are getting sick. People are having to call out and they're canceling important client appointments, because what happens when stressor after stressor after stressor builds up is that our body finally is fine. It's like, okay, well, if you're not going to listen to the emotions, if you're not going to listen to all of the warning signals I gave you, I'm going to shut you down.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And so, I think noticing and realizing that there is a true correlation between the stress and these outcomes. And that's the difference between you getting behind on your work or getting behind in your revenue and you growing. And people having, I think there's a lot of talk about personal brand right now. And I love the definition of personal brand is what people say when you're not in the room. And I think that when we show up irritable or anxious or even depressed in a conversation, that's what people are talking about. People read energy. They remember how you made them feel more than you made them, more than what you said.
Yeah, agreed. So it's important to understand when your body is sending you different signals, right?
Yeah.
Maybe give us, let's say our listeners that are listening to this episode, they're looking for some tangible takeaways. Give us maybe 2 or 3 things that you can do. They can start doing tomorrow morning to reduce stress.
Yes. And actually, I'm going to give them something that they can start right now. At the end of this podcast, they can get started on.
All right.
Because, it's really about implementing it now, because the now leads to tomorrow, right? And I think there's a great example. My own former business coach used to say to me, the stuff you're doing today, you're going to see the results tomorrow, 60 days from now, 90 days from now. And so it's important to get started. But I want to circle back to the concept of creative stress reduction, because I believe that this is the foundation, the very first step that we need to be taking to manage our stress. And so if we return to creative stress reduction and the definition of this methodology that I've created, creative stress reduction is any activity that gets us out of fight, flight, or freeze mode and into a state of play or flow, aka rest and digest. And so the reason why this is so important is because if we're in fight or flight mode, we tend to make some pretty poor decisions.
True.
Almost always. Yeah. And so we need to get out of fight or flight mode so that we can start thinking clearly and strategically about what changes need to be made in our life to address those chronic stressors, the stuff that's coming up over and over and over again. And the reason, I'm going to go one step further, the reason why it's important that we address our chronic stress is because we can't prevent all stress triggers. Let's be real. I mean, we could not prevent COVID-19. We could not prevent a lot of stuff. But we can better prepare ourselves so that we can move through unpredictable stressors with grace by removing all of the unnecessary stressors that we're experiencing in our life. But it starts with getting out of fight or flight mode so that we can even be in the headspace to do that.
Yeah.
So the first thing that I recommend in order to find the creative stress reduction activity that works for you is to start with, back to the basics with the simple piece of paper and a pencil or pen or marker or whatever writing utensil you're into. And you're going to start by making a list of at least 50 to 100 activities that you love doing. And yes, 50 to 100. I feel like every time I recommend this, I see jaws drop across the audience. But it's really important that we have a diverse, abundant list of activities. Mm-hmm. And anything goes here. So it can be, I enjoy going on a walk. I enjoy playing with my dog. I like gardening. I like meditation. Maybe I like yoga. Or maybe even I love formatting Excel spreadsheets if that's what you're into. Can be anything. And it's really important not to edit ourselves here. So even the stuff that you're like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, you can put that on here on this list too, right? So you can put your wine, you can put your cookies, you can put the hanky-panky if that's what you're into. And really the whole point being that there's no editing in this process, because that's where we can get stuck. And that's when we get to the place of, oh, I can't come up with 50 to 100 items. I can't do this. This is too hard. And so once we have that list, once we get through that process, no editing, anything goes, we go to the next piece of the equation. And the next piece is to narrow down that list by asking 4 really important questions. And so the first question that we are going to ask in this process to narrow down our list is, does this item have the potential to put myself or someone else in harm's way? AKA, in the world we live in right now, could someone else get sick, or could I get sick? And if the answer is yes, we're going to cross that item off our list.
Gotcha.
Now, the second question that we're going to ask is, does this activity have the potential to trigger me? Right? Based on my past experience, maybe based on my past trauma, does this item have the potential to trigger me? And so I love to give this example from a client that worked with me a few years ago, because I cannot tell you, probably one of those mainstream approaches that we hear a lot about managing stress is going to get a massage. Yep. And I love me a good massage, but I had a client a few years ago who was a survivor of sexual assault. And she had never gotten a massage before. And so everyone in her life, well, let's say a few people in her life, kept telling her, you gotta go get a massage. It's going to make you feel so much more at ease. Your body's going to feel great. Your mind's going to feel great. You should just try it.
Somehow I don't think that went very well.
So no, we actually went through before she just went and got a massage, right? And we said, okay, based on your past experience, how comfortable do you feel with this? Are you 100% comfortable that you're not going to go in that room and feel triggered? And she said, I'm not sure. But I can tell you that even if a friend touches me in the wrong way, it makes me feel uncomfortable. And so we crossed that off her list, because creative stress reduction is not the time to explore past trauma. It's not the time to explore, am I, quote, strong enough or healed enough or whatever for this. It's the time to get out of fight or flight mode. And so even the possibility of that triggering her is not going to work for creative stress reduction. So we crossed it off. Another, more simple example is, if you have the beach on your list, and every time you go to the beach, you see those lovely, skinny 18-year-olds in their bathing suits, and you're looking at yourself and thinking, I do not measure up here, right? That's a trigger. So we got to be real about, the big and the small triggers.
Right.
And so if it has the potential to trigger you, you're going to cross it off.
Okay.
The third question that you're going to ask is, does this activity fit into my resources? And this is a really, really important one. Does it fit into my financial resources? Does it fit into my social resources? Does it fit into my time resources? And this is really important, especially for, busy professionals, because if we don't have the time to do this, we're not going to do it, right? We're going to push off our creative stress reduction until we one day magically have the time, magically have 2 weeks or a month to backpack around around Europe, right? We're going to keep pushing it off.
But shouldn't we, if we're really embracing the creative stress process, right? Shouldn't we really be making time for the things that we want, that we enjoy? If it is that you said I'm to write down 50 to 100 things that I enjoy doing, then I need to make the time. I have to be intentional about it. Wouldn't I need to be that way?
Yes. However, we're not trying to go from 0 to 60 in 3.5, right? And so we want to be realistic about, we're not going to be able to just storm in to, our boss's office or, completely upheaval our lives to take a month off. That's not to say, and this is one of the key things that I talk about too, is it's not to say that you can't plan for those things and you can't work towards those things. But the goal is to have an activity that is accessible to you right now, today, without a to-do list of I have to talk to this person, I have to change, relationship with this client, I have to do all of these other things that may cause more stress before I can get to this resource. A great example of something similar to this is, when folks write this list, oftentimes they'll write that fancy vacation. And then we'll go to their, they'll say, oh, I want to go to Hawaii or I want to go wherever. And we'll go to their bank account and it'll say something completely different.
Yes, you can have some big aspirations, but the resources might not match the aspiration.
Exactly. And it's not to say that we can't go to Hawaii or we can't go on that fancy vacation, but it's not accessible to us right now. And so we can add to our list and add to our plan that we're going to, save up enough money to make that happen 5 years down the road. But if we make that our creative stress reduction today, what we can do is we can actually cause more stress and put ourselves even more into fight or flight mode, because maybe we put that thing on our credit card and now we have credit card payments every month. Or we're jeopardizing our client relationships because we don't actually have the time resources to do that based on our past agreements. And so that's why we're really talking about, does it fit into my current resources? Because we don't want to create more stress. The goal is to get out of fight or flight mode, even if it's 5 minutes that we have right now in our current time.
Okay.
And so the last question that we're going to ask ourselves in terms of narrowing down this list is, if I did this activity every single time I was stressed out, would it be healthy? So there goes the wine, there goes the cookies.
My process of elimination.
Yes. And, I think that oftentimes this last question is probably the one where we're seeing the most lines happening, the most pencils scraping across paper, because this is often our go-to, right? These are the things that usually fit into what we would consider our resources. I mean, cookies aren't that expensive. Wine's not that expensive in the long run. And so that's why, we typically go to these things, because they typically fit into our resources. And so we're really looking to expand. Okay, what else can I do that's, cheap, that doesn't take much time? And we're not jeopardizing our financial future. We're not jeopardizing our health. We're not jeopardizing our relationships and things like that.
All right. So those are some good questions to ask ourselves to identify what we can do to reduce our stress. May I ask, based on your experience and, just working with the different clients that you've worked with over the years, could you give us maybe, and I know it's a very general question and it may not overlap across many different people, but maybe 2 or 3 stress-relating activities that you found works well for busy professionals, low resource, is healthy for you, but generally speaking, people tend to enjoy it?
Yes. So I will tell you that probably the 3 most common, I don't know if it's going to be 3, but we'll see what comes up for me. So the ones that are coming up for me that come up with my clients a lot are giving ourselves permission to dance in our home when we're cooking dinner or when we're folding the laundry, putting on music, singing. These are very common creative stress reduction activities that don't take much time. I mean, if we have a really short song, I think it's less than 2 minutes. I think we all have about 2 minutes a day. And allowing that play to come through you in those moments. I think those are, really great examples of, we might not be playing with Barbie dolls, which is a great example. And I was doing another podcast about 2 or 3 days ago, and she said, well, what about playing with Barbie dolls? I feel like that I should not be doing that. I said, well, if you're into that, you can do that. But I mean, no judgment here, right? But my guess is that your form of play is much different. Your form of play might be dancing in hardwood floors on socks in your kitchen or your living room, right? It's very different, very accessible. And so for busy professionals, I mean, if we are taking the time to microwave a meal, like even if we don't have time to cook it, what are we doing with that 2 minutes? My guess is we're probably scrolling through social media for that 2 minutes. Right. And so we can go still hop on our phone, put on a song instead of put on that social media app and take that 2 minutes. The other thing that I have a lot of clients do is that they get up and they walk around, especially right now. Many of us are in quarantine. They'll get up when they're starting to feel stressed and they'll do a walk around their house. Or if they live in a more urban environment like me, they walk around the block or they just pace from the front to the back, right? And getting up and getting out of fight or flight mode so that we can separate ourselves from that trigger for a moment. That's another way. And that's not necessarily play, but it is getting us to a state of flow or a state of rest and digest. And so these are really accessible items as well. And then I have, even more simple activities that some of my clients do. Some of my clients just try to get more grounded in their body by rubbing their hands together or rubbing their hands on their thighs. And I mention these because oftentimes we think that stress reduction has to be some big grand, like, oh, I'm going to take a bubble bath or I'm going to go on a trip or I'm going to, do something crazy. But it can literally just be, I'm going to get out of my head. I'm going to move the energy to my head, to my hands by just rubbing them together.
All right. So dancing, I have a crazy side to me, I must admit. Every now and again, I'll just get up and start playing music and I'll probably grab my daughter and say, come Summer, come on, let's dance. And she'll be like, Mom, but I like to do fun stuff. I like to swing. One of my dreams is to have a swing in my backyard. I feel so almost at peace with nature when I'm swinging. And of course, I love to go to the beach. But then I live in Jamaica, and I suppose people here when I live in Jamaica, they probably think I'm at the beach every weekend. Sadly, I don't live in a parish that the beach is in my backyard. I literally have to drive at least 30 to 45 minutes to get to the closest beach. And so just based on that, sometimes I don't get to the beach for months, especially with coronavirus. And, the government putting restriction on the number of people in any one location. But I totally agree with you. Simple things like playing music that you like to listen to, getting up and stretching, especially if you're working from home. I was talking to a client recently and she indicated that she actually puts in way more work when she's working from home because it's not like she has to pack up and leave at 5. Sometimes she doesn't realize how time has flown until she realizes the news is being read at 8 p.m. on the TV and she's like, oh, shoot, and I'm still here on my computer. And that's, 13, 14, 18-hour days. And you're like, what is happening? I mean, you wouldn't have been putting in that if you were physically at work, So I do agree with you that sometimes stress relief can be very, very simple strategies. But I guess sometimes we think so grandiose, we think it out of proportion instead of just trying to be very simple about it.
Yeah. And one thing that's coming up for me when you share that is that a lot of us get to the point where in our stress management journeys that we are working. Like we are hustle, go, get it done. And we almost do it to the point of this like subconscious resentment, right? Like, so when we finally get around to doing stress reduction or creative stress reduction or to take care of ourselves, we are in this headspace of like, I worked so hard. I deserve something grand. I deserve insert whatever, big thing it is. And so that mindset can really create a cycle because we say we want this big grand thing and then we realize it's not in our resources. And so our coping mechanism can become to just return back to work. And so really honoring that creative stress reduction can be multiple times throughout the day. It can be, the goal is to not have you be so empty that at the end of the day you feel I deserve this big grand thing, which you probably do. But it be that I feel slightly exhausted or I feel slightly stressed and I'm going to do this thing to recharge versus I'm completely empty, I'm burnt out and I need to do something yesterday.
Amazing. All right, Carlee, can you share with us, how do you stay motivated every day? So you're in a profession where you are dealing with stress of other people, helping them to reduce their stress. And I find sometimes if you're in that place where you're dealing with a lot of negative energy, sometimes over and over, it can impact you. How do you, start each day dealing with different clients and their own issues to rise above all that and stay motivated constantly every day?
Yes. So for me, my creative stress reduction is gardening. I cannot even believe it. If you would have asked me 10 years ago if I would be a gardener, I would have laughed at you and told you no way in heck. But for me, I love to, my thing is to, get up, go out, check on my garden. Even if nothing needs watered, if nothing needs repotted, it's just checking and connecting that way. That's for me. And then I would go a step beyond that. Creative stress reduction, like I said earlier, is just the first step. And so for me, I'm constantly evaluating what stressors are coming up over and over and over again in my life, or maybe they've come up one or two times and I'm starting to see a pattern. And so I'm constantly evaluating, what's working, what's not, what can I change so that I'm not creating chronic stress, or I'm not allowing chronic stress in my life. Mm-hmm. And so whether that's setting boundaries with clients, with love, whether that's, setting boundaries with family, whether that's allowing myself more downtime, more space, I don't know what it would be, but each day I'm really evaluating, okay, what could be causing some discomfort in my life, and what can I do to move through my life with more joy. And it's really, for me, and I think for everyone, it's showing up every single day, willing to address the hard stuff so that we can not let it become baggage, and so we can move through life so much lighter.
Right. All right. So can you share with us maybe one online resource, tool, website, or app that you absolutely couldn't live without in your business?
Yes. So I would say Insight Timer. I really love Insight Timer. It is a meditation app, which I cannot believe I'm recommending it because it's one of those 5 mainstream approaches, but I have to be honest, I use it every single day. And talk about accessibility, I think I use it to meditate for 2-minute meditations at least once a day. So it's a great app that has tons of free meditations that you can use for all sorts of different reasons, for, revenue growth, for anxiety, for sleep. I mean, it's a really great versatile app.
Very good. All right. So we'll definitely have the link to that app in the show notes of this episode. And then, Carlee, share with us maybe 1 or 2 books that have had the biggest impact on you. It could be a book that you read recently, or even a book that you read a very long time ago, but the principles and, tips that you maybe have picked up in there still stay with you to this very day. That's
such an easy question. Yeah, it's The One Thing by Gary Keller.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. It is.
He actually has a podcast as well.
Yes, he does have a podcast as well. And that book, I've taken a lot of those principles and applied that to my business, to my work life, to my personal life. It's made everything so much more simple, so much more easy to digest. It's a really great book.
Excellent. All right, Carlee. Can you share with us what's one thing that's going on in your life right now that you're really excited about, either something that you're working on to develop yourself or your people?
Yes. So I'm super excited about this self-care accountability group called the Virtual Stress Less Space that I am running. It's brand new. I think it's only 2 months old at this point. And basically what we do is we hop on Zoom, we go around the room, we share what self-care activities or what creative stress reduction or what we're going to do to take care of ourselves in the next 40 minutes. And then we all shut off our cameras, we mute ourselves, and we do something crazy, which is go do it in the moment. And then we return back and we share, did we do it or didn't we do it? And if we didn't, what can we change so that we do it next time? And I'm super, super excited about that because I think oftentimes you were talking about earlier, like shouldn't we be making the time? And the answer is yes. And oftentimes we might make the time, but we don't follow through because there's no one else on the other side. And so I love this group because we have the accountability with other members of the group that can say, hey, did you show up? Did you do that thing? And all from a place of love.
Brilliant. All right. And so is this a program that you applied to get into, or is it a program where anyone can access it?
Anyone can access it if you visit stresslessco.com/virtual stressless space.
All right. Okay. So I'll definitely have that URL in the show notes for this episode. Okay, Carlee. So let's say our listeners listen to this episode and they're thinking, I would like to connect with Carlee a little bit more, follow her journey, maybe see some of the other resources that she has available that I could access in order to reduce stress in my life, or even to reduce stress in the lives of my team members. Where can they find you online?
Absolutely. So you can find me at stresslessco.com. And you can also find me basically anywhere on social media at The Stress Less Co.
All right. Excellent. Okay, Carlee. So before we wrap our interviews up, we always like to ask our guests, what's one quote or saying that during times of adversity or challenge you will revert to? It kind of helps to refocus you and just help you to get back on track. Do you have one of those?
My mantra is, I choose calm.
That is very simple. And it's straight to the point. I choose calm. All right. And of course, calm can be manifested in many different ways depending on whatever makes you feel calm, right?
Exactly.
All right. Okay, well, thank you so much, Carlee, for taking time out of your very busy day to jump on this podcast with us and share all of your amazing tips about stress relief. I think, as I said at the beginning of our conversation, stress is one of the main catalysts, I believe, for a lot of the chronic illnesses that people face. I mean, at least I know for sure, at least in our economy in Jamaica, because I do a lot of work with the health sector, and when they dial down the number of people in Jamaica that are diabetic or suffer from high blood pressure, and a lot of times the catalyst for those diseases, even though they're lifestyle diseases, is stress. So I believe if people really get very intentional, as you said, ask themselves those 4 questions, be very intentional about doing those activities that, as you said, take them away from flight or fight, where they can go to a place of fun and creativity and play, we'll have a better world. You know, people will be living longer and they'll be doing things that I think they'll be enjoying more, which, I mean, we only have one life to live. You really should be doing things that you're enjoying.
100%.
So thank you, Carlee.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Awesome. Okay, guys. So just want to remind you, if you'd like to follow us on Facebook, feel free to join our private Facebook group. It's called Navigating the Customer Experience Community. And feel free to follow us on Twitter, Navigating CX. I recently completed an animated video, testing out animation. So I'd love if you listeners could hop on to the group, or even on Twitter, and give me some feedback on what you think of the animated video. I'm doing a test or an experiment to see how people are responding to video in animation format. So I would love your feedback. However, until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant. Thank you for listening to Navigating the Customer Experience. If you'd like to connect with us even more, please feel free to hop onto Facebook and join our private Facebook group, Navigating the Customer Experience Community. And of course, feel free to follow us on Twitter at Navigating CX. We also have a new book available on Amazon, The ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience. It's available in ebook and paperback. So if you want to increase revenue in your organization, build a stronger service culture, and create employees or develop employees who are really mastering service delivery in your business, you need to grab a copy of this book. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.